Just ripping. Tuesday night, 8:30 EST. Know where we be. Just ripping. Special guest and tech and talk. A musicology. Just ripping. Coming to you live at the same time. Here every week. Just ripping. Jump in the room. Let's chop it up. It really ain't that deep. Just ripping.
What's up, everybody? Hang tight. This is Just Riffin. I got to just turn something down. I forgot to put something on mute. It's going to bother me. This is Just Riffin. We do this every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight, we have a very, very special guest, Michael Lee. He is the co-creator and the CEO. I believe he's the CEO of Abstract Chain, working with Luca Nets. This is awesome. This guy's been around for a long time, worked everywhere from, I want to say, from Wall Street to video games to Web3, and here we are. So I'm excited to have him. He's on short time, but we're gonna have a plethora of things to talk about while he's here with us. Cookie Rabinowitz, my co-host. I'm his co-host. Cookie, how you doing? What's good with you this week, my brother?
I'm just chat GPTing what plethora means real quick. I'll be right back.
Right on, dude. ChatGPT. Speaking of it, man, I use it every single day. I'm working actually on a website, and it's good. It's like it's your handy assistant right there. Ask whatever you need and you shall receive.
It's amazing. And I mean, it's probably everybody talks about it, so it's probably a little long in the tooth, but just every iteration of it is just getting so much smarter. And just like with helping with coding and stuff, it's pretty wild. It's a fast track to get some of the grunt work done, so you can get to the creative stuff, the stuff you're passionate about. Let the computers be your bitch. That's what I always say. I actually saw Prince, a little Prince clip. It was pretty cool, and he was talking about computers, and this is a while ago. Obviously, he's, I think, passed away about 12 years ago, and he was just saying, use the computers, don't let the computers use you. And it's funny because a lot of people are worried about the inverse now with all this technology, with machine learning and agents, AI agents, and not to mention secret agents, like James Bond AI.
So crazy that you mentioned who you mentioned, because I've been on YouTube, and you get into those like what do you call those funnels, and you just
rabbit hole.
Yeah, rabbit hole. So James Bond, I've been watching. I learned about Q, who was the guy who gives him all the the equipment and stuff. It was like all of Q's clips. Pretty interesting, because a lot of sometimes you just when you're watching a movie, you're in and out. You don't really remember everything. And it was awesome to be reminded of that. And then also that brought up memories of Austin Powers, how they kind of shot the movies like that. Just great,
When you said about movies, and I remember it, I have to mention this, and I'm wondering if anybody else ever has a situation, and if you do, let us know in the comments or whatever. But I have this problem. Like, people have narcolepsy when they drive and they fall asleep. I cannot go to a movie or even watch one in the house. Me and my girl put on a movie, and I cannot watch one without falling asleep. It's like an instant sedative. That's
instant old man stuff right there.
No, that's ever since I was 17, man. It's like I just, I mean, it's just, I don't know what it is. It's just sitting down. It just puts me to sleep. But
that's incredible, man. That's I've only fallen asleep once. I'll be honest. It was during one of the Mission Impossibles. I was so burnt. I went with my girlfriend at the time. I'm sitting in the back of the movie theater because I didn't want to, just wanted to chill. I seriously just zonked out. I've never done that in my entire life. I woke up. It was like right at the end of the movie. I was like, what the fuck? I missed everything. That's crazy. I want to talk about this whole Spotify thing with AI. I wanted to get into that with you. We're going to bring Michael Lee up in a minute here. But before we do that, let's get into this real quickly here. Spotify and AI, and what do you know about it? I know this is something you wanted to chit chat about.
I did, and I also want to give kudos to there's a YouTube channel I listen to all the time on the way home from work. It's called Top Music Attorney, and this woman, she is an artist, but she's also an attorney, and she talks about, she really goes deep inside privacy policies of platforms, and she dissects them. So people, myself included, how many of us, when we get that sign the agreement, we just go boo 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 and we just click it. But
right.
In this day and age we're in right now, it's good to really know what you're clicking, because Spotify and SoundCloud as well, they recently started well, first of all, Spotify for a long time has been, kind of supplementing their playlists and stuff with AI generated music. It's a cheap way for them to kind of have content when people are just blindly listening, like elevator music, and then not have to pay as much out to royalties and stuff. Everybody knows about this. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the interesting thing though is now in the privacy agreement, if you sign like that, their new policy agreement, you're basically saying that in the future, now keep in mind, this is how a lot of legacy artists kind of lost a lot of their distribution and collection rights because of technology advancing past the paperwork. Well, so the paperwork, so to speak, now is basically saying loosely, but it's covered in there. Like, let's say if you put a song up on the streaming platform, Spotify or SoundCloud, it's basically saying that you're giving the right for other people and AI to absorb the content and also to remix it and stuff. Now, hey, I think that's flattering. People remix your music and everything, but the scenario that comes to mind for me is like, let's say, you don't have a huge amount of listeners and you're still kind of kicking at the doors, but somebody just finds your song, they like it, and they remix it. But not only do they remix it in a way that's kind of distasteful to who you are as an artist, right?
Like it messes with the integrity of.
Yeah, and I'm very loose with this stuff. It's not that deep. We make our music and we put it out there. But I definitely wouldn't want people to be. I wouldn't want to be misrepresented. First impressions, right? So if anything, I would at least want people to know the original track first. And this brings to mind that Mike Posner song, that Took a Pill in Ibiza. Like, I think that dance, the popular version is amazing, and his version is amazing too. But that could have went another way. It could have went like some person mixed it in some type of genre that he wasn't really that fond of and utilized it. It couldn't happen then because obviously he was a part of that and he consented to that. But with these new policies, somebody could, like, you could drag somebody's song into AI and create some stuff and whatever, and kind of not have a right to the vision of it. So I'm not talking about money here. I'm talking about just your vision as an artist. And I think most artists that I know, they have a vision and they want people to absorb that first. They wouldn't want to get the McDonald's version before the Wendy's version. That's about.
Yeah, I kind of understand that. I mean, and it goes back also to like having dope producers remix your projects, So that's from the artist going, okay, yeah, I do want, Cookie Rabinowitz, or I do want, I don't know, Questlove or whoever it may be to do the remix of this particular song. So I don't know with that. It's hard to fathom it, but it's all there. It's all coming, AI. I'll tell you what, there's, we had Rob Charm on the show from Hook, right? And you say, okay, you knew I was going to go into that. Okay. So Hook is this cool app and I mess with it all the time. Now being a musician, I don't want to ruin the integrity of a particular song or whatever, someone's project. So I do my best before I let the public hear it. I do my best to make sure that the mix is right, that it's in tempo, that it sounds good from the beginning to the end. I don't want it to even go off beat a smidget. I want it to be so you could really, so it could be a record, right? You wouldn't know if the DJ was spinning it in the club, or at, in Ibiza or wherever, like, so I just feel like, I want to do right by the artists. I don't say artists, because you're mixing and it's all done by AI, which I think is really cool, man. I mean, it's human too, because you got to move tracks around and stuff like that. So yeah.
Understood. I just want to add this too, though. It's still, even if, and like you are, and there's a lot of great producer artists, but it's still going to be your spin of the track. So even though it'll be quality, it still might be a misrepresentation of how the artist wants to be perceived their first time out the gate.
I agree with that.
And just, the punchline of this is just artists should just be aware of it. And if they're cool with it, they should be cool with it. But if they're not, they should maybe think twice about having music on certain platforms. And if it doesn't matter to them, it doesn't matter, but they should just be aware of it. Or not that they should be aware of it, but I feel like it's a good idea to be aware of where you put your stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
how
it's kind of like they put the kibosh on it. I mean, look, Spotify, we already know is not the best for musicians. It's the best for the consumer. It's not the best for the musicians. The consumer wins, and Spotify wins. The artists do not win unless we said this a million times, unless you're Beyonce and you're Taylor Swift and you're selling, millions you got zillions of streams, then you're going to make $1, like, so. And this is just an added thing to what they're doing. Spotify, they're trying to get into the AI game. I don't know. Like, we'll see how it turns out. I just know that in the end, the artists need to be paid a fair share. That's it.
For sure. I mean,
and this whole thing
for the artists, though. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But the distribution of Spotify, I think, as far as monetize wise, it's not good for the artists. But as far as for marketing, as far as for ease of use, like I
agree.
Listeners being able to. Listeners should be able to access you, and their platform works. I mean, it's a cool platform.
They just don't pay.
Well, yeah. I mean, and we don't need, we understand that, but like, I don't want to get into all the money thing. I just, I don't really care about that stuff.
For sure, dude. But yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you had a chance to check that out, and I always respect your opinion on these type of things, especially when it comes to streaming platforms, because you got way more music on there, than I have. So, and you got, more use cases out of this these streaming platforms. Real quick before we bring Michael up, you are about to do a show, right? Where are you performing at?
Oh, I'm really stoked because I'm not biased at all, but my lady, she's got like one of the best pop female voices ever. She was actually signed by Clive Davis back in the day,
Yes.
But anyway, she's amazing, and I do my gigs all the time, but we're doing one together, which we never do, and we're doing a tribute to Quincy Jones. And so there's a bunch of artists, a bunch of Philly artists, and we're gonna play we're gonna play some Quincy Jones songs, which was a challenge, but I'm excited about it. We'll see how it goes, because we're incorporating some loops and some electronics and stuff. So I'll let you know how it goes. If I don't talk about it next week, you'll know it wasn't good. But if I'm like,
For sure. By the way, I sent you a text message regarding our 24-hour stream that we got going on. So check your phone. In the meanwhile, I want to bring up our special guest. This is a dude that is, man, he's got just so much knowledge, and I'm excited to talk to him. He is the CEO and the co-inventor of Abstract. If you're not familiar, it's a consumer crypto blockchain focused on mass market consumer adoption. Sorry about that. And so we're going to get into it. He's worked for zkSync. He's worked with Activision Blizzard. He was working on Wall Street. So this dude's got the smarts, man. Let's bring him up to the stage. Mr. Michael Lee, welcome to Just Riffin'. How you doing today? I know you're in transit, so thanks for taking the time.
Yo, what's good, man?
Everything is good, man. So I want to get into with you. I'm sure you've been asked a million times, from your Wall Street to gaming to Web3. So if you want to maybe give us just like a briefing on the early stages of your life and like how you got to where you are, how we got to Abstract.
It is completely unintentional. It is like my entire career life has just been improv.
Now we're before Solomon Brothers, not the movie, the actual, Solomon Brothers on Wall Street, right? So is that where you started?
Yeah.
Were you doing that first?
Yeah, like, a lot of my start was just growing up in New York City in the 90s, where I just got into the culture, right? Hip hop in the 90s, streetwear. And I got super lucky. Like, one of my best friends, his uncle was Rick Rubin.
Oh man.
And we were going to see Biggie out in Brooklyn, Nas up in Queens, Wu-Tang out in Staten Island. And like, we were like that token, like Asian and like Jewish kid that was given like safe passage to go into the hood. Like, we still got harassed. But they're like, yo, like, those are like Rick's nephews, like, just, leave them the fuck alone.
Yeah.
And like, just being invited into the culture, like, you get to appreciate the culture. And then, like, again, like, people spun off, into streetwear, like, kind of grew up as like a thrasher, like just skateboarding around New York. So it's like, hip hop and, you know, skateboarding like turned into streetwear, turned into hip hop, and like a lot of these like worlds collided. You saw that later on, like probably out in LA with like Odd Future and like Tyler, where, you know, hip hop and skate culture really like combined. But like
and
a lot of the early,
clothing.
yeah, totally, right. And like again, like you saw, like, you know, Vice was like kind of making, you know, they'd moved to Brooklyn. It was really starting to like, you know, kind of create like a hub for kind of like, you know, like that next generation of like what is like Gen Xers, millennials, like how do they push the culture forward? And then like out in LA, you had like Bobby Hundreds and you know, I think what eventually became like the
LRG was out there too. There was a lot of,
and then it turned into like a really robust like hip hop scene from like Odd Future to Nipsey. And so it's like a lot of that is like started like just growing up in New York, and then ended up before Salomon Brothers, just went to Chicago to be an economist, and just, you know, came out early and just ended up at Salomon Brothers just because I read Michael Lewis's book, Liar's Poker. There was like midget tossing, prostitutes in the office, like people just making like bags like overnight. I'm like, I gotta check this spot out, like see if it's real.
What drew you to it?
It's just like, again, it's like, you know, kind of growing up on like World of Warcraft or Call of Duty. It's like these are like these worlds, these universes of itself. So when you read something like that, you're like, I gotta check that shit out. And I got lucky where my best friend out of university was Brazilian national, where her dad was the head of the central bank in the 80s in Brazil. And he knew Sandy Wheel, who was the CEO of Salomon Brothers. And he just like called him up on his like, you know, his like Zach Morris, you know, phone. And he's like, yo, like, you know, Michael's graduating early, wants to work for your whack ass firm. And he was like, you know, send him over, and did that for a year. It was everything that I thought it would be: sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
And
what's one takeaway? What'd you learn from that financially?
It wasn't anything financial. It was like part of my day job was just being, you know, like the CEO's body man. So like you would literally just like, as like a young 19-and-a-half-year-old kid in like a suit 2 sizes too big, just carrying the CEO's briefcase, his Tic Tacs, doing his regression analysis before a meeting so he sounds smarter than he is. And like, you're just in the room, right? Like he's having breakfast with Bill Clinton in the White House. You hop on a jet. He's having dinner with the president of the World Bank. And it's just access, right? You see like what happens behind the curtain, the deal making, just how they think about, you know, macro, how they run like these massive businesses. And you just get to realize, like, you know, these guys are just people, right? Just really people, obviously. Right. And like, it's not that they're smart people, like smart, like it's more like what goes into being smart. It's just like, you know, like you're curious, but these are just people who have really fast processor speeds to like ingest information. And then they have equally fast abilities to like take that information and apply it to a situation, which then leads to like some kind of financial outcome or business outcome. And like, once you like see that like on display day in, day out, then it's like, all right, like, you know, the stuff that they're doing where they're like world, you know, kind of like shaping, that doesn't really seem like so far off. It's like, these are just dudes, right? You know, like playing a game.
You're just moving and shaking. That's it. They're just, I mean, it's to me, like what I'm getting is like just connection. I mean, it's common sense to me, but it's just the connections. Like once you're in there deep like that, you know, you're rubbing elbows with people that want to get deep with you as well and want to make as much money as possible and move
no different
things.
than gaming or crypto, or it's like, you know, people just move in packs.
Yeah,
right? Like
I agree with that. Yeah.
You know, you have your clan. You know, you have it's like you're, you know, you have fun like doing like a common shared activity together, and you all kind of come up together. It's no different than like how I grew up like in New York to, you know, the Warcraft server that I was on, to eventually like, you know, whenever like whether it's Wall Street or politics or tech, it's like it's all the same like way of working.
Yeah, like the back end is all the same. I mean, there's only so many ways you could do things, right? It's you know, it's just a matter of what obstacles in front of you to get around. I think the end game, the end all is what everybody's fighting for and everybody's shooting for, whether it's a game release or whether it's a stock that's going to go up, So,
Yeah.
so you're at this financial institution for a year. I presume you got bored with it.
Like I ended up walking away because I woke up in a Vegas strip club at 7 a.m. like face down. And I was like, I went way too hard, and I put in my resignation like that following Monday, and I did the complete opposite, and I ended up back in a doctoral program for economics. I was like thinking like, what is a complete polar opposite of Wall Street? And it was like academia, and that was interesting. And then I was probably like the dumbest in the cohort, so like I couldn't get a dissertation approved. So I took a gap year after the first 2 years. You kind of pass your qualifying exams to get a master's, and then I got lucky again. Like I had David Wilhelm, who ran Clinton's campaign in '92, David Axelrod, come to the university looking for a young economist to speechwrite. I thought that was actually really interesting. So I was like, all right, like that, let's learn. Like I guess like this is like before ChatGPT. So like I got to like Google like how to be a speechwriter. But thankfully it was like mostly like economic policy speeches. So like that was like within like at least my realm of competence. So worked with Hillary Clinton when she ran for Senate, Jesse Jackson Sr. That was a little bit more like kind of like scripted television. And then worked with a young Barack when he was in the state Senate.
That's pretty cool though. I mean, all that experience, that is insane. I mean, obviously, you've taken that with you. You don't just like forget any of those things. You understand like when things are coming at you, how to handle yourself in certain situations, because you've learned so much from these people that have learned from the people before them. So this is just awesome to me. So how do you get from all of this other stuff to the fun stuff? How do you get to the gaming? How did you get there?
It's like right place at the right time, right? Like after the DNC, ended up at IBM for a couple of years because I wanted to see how like a $100 billion company operated, right? Like how do you make $100 billion a year, operate in 172 countries? So got to work with the CEO, helped on. It's like an IBM in general, like it's a marketing machine. It's like I was part of the team that created the Smarter Planet campaign. And again, like for the people listening, trying to figure out like Smarter Planet, like really just came from what is IBM good at? They sell servers, middleware, like, consulting, a bunch of like just non-consumer friendly things. Like how do you make that a Super Bowl ad? And once you figure out like, okay, who's using this shit, right? It's like Fortune 500 companies.
Big,
like
yeah.
If every Fortune 500 company is using their gear, if you just connected all of them, you're essentially connecting the world and you're making the world smarter. So then now all of a sudden that becomes potentially a Super Bowl commercial. So even like something that's like almost like unrelatable to the consumer, who's watching the Super Bowl, you can try to figure it out to where it's relevant to them, right? So then that turns into like smarter cities and smarter energy, smarter water, like, it kind of, and this is like in the boom of like, not the internet, but like probably like, like maybe like enterprises, like e-business, like when enterprises leverage the internet to go to market. So it's just also like right place, right time. Like they had product market fit with that, and that kind of really launched them. And then I ended up leaving to go work for Comedy Central to be a showrunner, to do a bunch of hip hop sketch comedy shows. I originally got there to be a staff writer for the Colbert Report. And just because
how do you, this is just, okay, wait, I got to back up, Michael, because this is like, this is a movie. This is a movie.
It's not the object, obviously you don't go from like the DNC to IBM to Comedy Central, but again,
how do you get, what?
A friend of mine.
Hold on. Your mind, not who got you there and how you got there. Your mind state going from is this just because you want to learn? You're like wanting to learn these different aspects. What was your end goal?
It's always been the same, right?
Okay.
Like, generally, the way that I pick something is just one rule: doing dope shit with dope people, right? Like, and again, like when you have that filter, it seems easy, but your options actually are very far and few, right? right? Because you could be working with a bunch of dope people on some whack ass shit, so that's out. Or you could be working on like, I don't know, world changing technology, but with a bunch of assholes, right? And that's out too. So once you can actually figure that out, then it's like, okay, like that, like let's go do this. And then once you join, a project, or a company, like you have to treat it like almost like a tour of duty, where it's like, I'm doing like a tour in Afghanistan. I'm doing like 2 tours, in Iraq, right? What does that look like? So then so you almost like an athlete, where it's like, what's, it's a 3-year contract, right? I'm thinking about, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here that's attainable? And so then it becomes really easy to figure out like, when is it time to leave? And then, so at least with like, with IBM, like we had launched Smarter Planet, that felt like, okay, like that was interesting. I got to see the inside of a $100 billion company. I got to contribute to something that, made the company relevant to, a mass audience. And then the opportunity came where a friend of mine was a VP of development at Comedy Central. Again, like this, it's all relationships. Like I was doing sketch comedy in Chicago. Yeah. He was doing sketch comedy at Dartmouth. He remembered that, well, he was one trying to staff up for the Colbert Report. So they're like, who's somewhat funny on paper and has a political background? So like, I came to mind. And again, this is where, I'm a complete idiot in that I'm like I love Colbert, like on the Daily Show, but I'm not sure if this has legs to be its own show. Right. So it's like,
little did you know, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, it's like, yeah, I can't really see out, like what would hit or not. But then he was like, you kind of came up, knowing a lot of people in hip hop, and he's like, well, what if I give you a first look deal to where, write something semi-funny, attach an art, a talent to it, and then we'll option it. And then we'll, do something on, .com. And if it gets any kind of traction, it can go to series on TV, on broadcast television. So that sounded fun, to where it's like, you get to like, work with Wu-Tang on like a, hip hop sketch comedy show hosted by them. And, everyone, walks away with like 50 racks. And it's like, that was like fun for a quarter. And then, you try to film a pilot. If it performs well, which it never does, because all the stuff that we did was super niche, it'd go to series. And then like, yeah, that was like fun for 4 years, like 2 years in New York, 2 years in LA. And this is where I got into gaming, where just sharing an office with, Paul Eckstein, who, RIP, recently passed away, but he later on became the co-creator of Narcos and Godfather of Harlem. So it's like, we were just like, he was like a Rastafarian Jew. I was like this like Asian cat. We were just like
you guys shared an office together?
Yeah. We're just like cool, smoked out and like playing Call of Duty. And this is like, this is like when like Modern Warfare had first come out. And we just both got ridiculously good. I was way better than him at it. And then like, again, this is like the early days before esports. So like you can like easily become, not easily, but like, you put in enough hours, it's like your top 25, 50 player. And this is where, again, like, you get on the radar of, people like Activision, where, Bobby was trying to create an esports league. And again, like he's, people like him are the visionaries, right? Like I know he gets a bad rap in gaming because he's, he's commercializing it, but like he saw Blizzard, to where he, bought that, he saw the rise of mobile gaming to where he bought, King and, that makes Candy Crush. He saw like, esports, eventually kind of becoming this like, to where like, gaming was going. And so, yeah, so I think for kind of passed on that just because I was like, that's not what I wanted. Gaming is fun for me. It's entertainment. It's not how I want to spend my life. And plus you also know, it's like once like the Asian players get in, like the Koreans, the Japanese, like the Chinese, like you're going to get absolutely smoked. So I'm like, like my ego can't handle that. So yeah. So then ended up,
but you're Asian. What are you talking about? You're Asian, bro.
No, it's, like these guys are like, these are the guys that are like spending like 20 hours and like,
these are the super Asians.
Yeah,
I know that they're out there, bro.
These are like the next level. Right. So it's like, yeah, it's like I'm like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, and this is like whatever, like the T1000, like, you know, those guys are out there.
Understood.
So like,
Understood.
So like, you know, it's like, and again, like, there's some things that you just enjoy, you know, because it's just, you know, it's a hobby, it's entertainment. And then some things like you're like, all right, like, you know, I wouldn't mind turning this into a job. Gaming just wasn't one of them. And then, yeah, it's just kind of like, you know, hung out at Comedy Central and then eventually went back into politics because Obama was running in 08. You know, David Wilhelm had asked, you know, if I could come back as an operative to win the state of Ohio. Again, like it's one of those things where I wasn't really a political operative, you know, back in my first stint, but you know, you get to learn from someone like that, you know, that has won, you know, got Clinton into the White House, like he's on the ground, incredible. Like managing all of Ohio, and like how does that work? And it's not really about even political affiliations. It's just about like, you know, these guys are just like they're like athletes, right? It's binary outcome, zero sum game. Winning, you're either win or you lose, and it's like you kind of respect, you know, both players, both sides, whether it's, you know, Karl Rove or David Wilhelm or David Plouffe or, you know, even like Trump, you know, in two different, you know, election cycles. So like you're just there, like you're just learning on the job, trying to figure out. And this is like the early days where it's like, you know, using social to zero in on voters. Likely.
What were you guys using back then? Was it Friendster, MySpace? What were you guys?
Facebook.
Facebook.
The thing that turned, and I think, you know, in every presidential election, at least in the U.S., like people who are on the far left and the far right, like they're going to vote the way they vote. Right? True. You're not going to change them. It's always like that 3% of kind of like truly undecided voters that really like make in certain swing states that really determine elections. And the way that and ideally what you want is like, how do you find those people, right? Like in a state as large as whether it's Ohio or Florida, like that are always up for grabs. It's like, you know, how do you find that 3%?
Yeah. How do you attract them? How do you bring them in?
Yeah. And the insight that we had was on Facebook, people who actually followed the NPR Facebook page were more likely, if they were kind of in that 3%, lean towards Obama than.
So how do you attack that if you're Obama?
Door to door.
Wow.
I'm not sure if this really works nowadays, right? Because it's like you saw this in the last election cycle, right? Yeah, it's like Trump had a master class on just like, you know, using new media, like, you know, podcasts and whatnot to really reach, like, especially like a younger, you know, like this Gen Z audience. But at least in 08 and in the state of Ohio, it was just identifying people and then like trying to figure out, okay, like where do you have coverage, like, you know, which precincts, and then just like deploy people like just on foot. And
that's incredible to me.
Again, it's like,
yeah,
it's like the reason, like, I don't know, it's like the reason like people, there's always like that uncle that you have that's like the tech guy, like at least when I was growing up. You could do all this research on like flat screen TVs, right? You're like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, get the new like Sony flat screen TV. But if you're the uncle, like, you know, the token tech guy is like, no, like this piece of shit thing from, you know, China is like the thing. Just throw all that research out. I see my dad just completely pivoting to, you know, what this guy's saying, because again, like there's that, you know, there's that connection, right? So I think that's what they figured out in 08. It's like identify people who, you know, essentially just need a little nudge, right? And then just got to make that personal connection to where, you know, they're just connecting kind of a leaning to an actual like physical IRL experience. Again, like crypto is no different. You know, it's like, you know, for those, at least I came out of like the earliest Ethereum, it's like, you know, whenever there's some stickiness to Ethereum, because it's like you made all these friends like on Twitter and subreddits, and then eventually like you just went to this traveling circus that is crypto to all these Ethereum meetups, and you just end up, you know, I think Solana does a great job too in this regard, where it's like there's this like, you know, digital to IRL community building that I think both ecosystems do a really great job at. And that was no different back in 08. And then I think after that, just really burnt out, because whenever you do these presidential election cycles, it's you know, it's like what, 20-hour days, 7 days a week. So
you're dragging your ass around, dude, for nothing.
Yeah. To be honest, like that I probably was the most unenthusiastic person on the campaign trail, because it was like a favor, right, for my guy who's, you know, David Wilhelm. He's like, yo, you gotta come out of retirement to help out here. I'm like, bro, it's like, there's like 500 people above me on the list. Go call them. And he's like, I did. He's like, you are the bottom of the barrel. And that was actually true, right? And this is not me being, you know, just, saying that. It's like, I don't know, people don't remember in 08, like Obama wasn't the front runner. Like you had Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, John Edwards, before, you know, he ended up, you know, the scandal of like cheating on his wife who had cancer, Bill Richardson. Like there's literally 20 other like viable candidates, like, you know, in the field. And everyone, even though Obama won the New Hampshire primary, or he won Iowa, came in second for New Hampshire, everyone just thought that he would just run out of money and just momentum, right? And it was one of these things where, again, you know, your friend, your kind of your clan, like, you know, wants to get the band back together. It's like, you know, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna have a, you know, L on the resume, but at least I'm gonna do it with my friends. And then, like, you know, surprise, we won. But again,
were you on the second term as well, or just that first term?
No, just the first.
Just the first
I
one. You didn't even want to be there, huh?
Yeah, I spun off. I ended up just getting I took 2 years off, go to business school, just because I figured, like, you know, go somewhere, read some books, drink some beer.
Keep learning.
It was you know, I just called up a bunch of business schools, be like, yo, like, you know, I don't have any test scores, don't have any application, but I have some great stories from the campaign trail. I think 4 out of 5 of them were like, we'll see you in September.
Oh, that's dope.
So showed up, had a blast, made some really good friends. And then since then, like, moved out to SF, Silicon Valley. And the first job was to separate HP and then do 2 IPOs. That was super fun, because there was like a dirty dozen of us. That was like, this was like our main job for like a year.
Is that HP you said?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Because in order for like the business to survive, like it couldn't survive in its original state. So it had to like separate to like, one is a consumer business, one's like more of like an enterprise focused business. And I think Meg Whitman, to her credit, was really trying to, you know, turn around the company, you know, keep it together. But the plan B was to separate the company and like make sure that they're, you know, 2 companies can, you know, survive as smaller versions of itself. And there's like a dirty dozen of us that focused on this for like a year and a half, and then we all had not fake day jobs, but like we also had to like, you know, we also had to have like actual jobs. Otherwise, it looked super suspicious. So I was running a lot of marketing for HP. Again, it's not that I came up as a marketeer, but you just kind of figure it out, right? As long as you can like figure out like what the tech does, you can figure out, you know, how to actually promote it. So yeah, I did that, and that just got me kind of established, you know, helped me build a network in Silicon Valley. Probably one of the earlier people that I met, this is how I got into Bitcoin, was through a friend of a friend. Like a friend who was working at Tesla was like, yo, can you help my friend out? You know, he's one of the founders of this wallet company, Zappo, which Coinbase later on bought. And he was asking help like marketing Bitcoin. And I was like, this shit sounds like a scam. Like, and again, this is like what, 2012. And you know, it's like, you know, we hang out, lunch turns to dinner, turns to the drinks. And he's like, let me pay for like my half of like the drinks, like, you know, with Bitcoin. This is like what, 2012, when like, you know, people were like buying pizza with Bitcoin out in Palo Alto. And like, you know, I download the wallet, you know, from the App Store. It seemed pretty straightforward. And then sends me some Bitcoin, and he's like, oh, they'll finalize in like, you know, 40, 45 minutes. And I was like, that right there, brother, is why this shit will fail.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like, you know, I had the sense, I don't know, but like, I figured like, all right, like, you know, might as well just ape into it. What's the worst that can happen? I you know, lose my life savings to that point. And then it kind of ended up where it's like that, you know, it's almost like like a pass to then go to all the Bitcoin meetups. But there's only one at the time, like at this.
That's so early. 2000. I found out about Bitcoin in 2014, and I had a friend of mine who did a job, and they paid in Bitcoin. And so when I'm talking, we're having a conversation. They're like, "Yeah, they paid me in Bitcoin." And me, my first reaction was like, "What the fuck is that?" And they're like, "Digital money, digital." I'm like, "Yeah, but how do you get the money?" I wasn't comprehending what was what, and I didn't at that time stop to use my intuitive brain to go, what is Bitcoin? Let me go find out about it. So I didn't really hear about it till, later on, you know what I'm saying? When it came back around and people were actually trading it.
Yeah. I use my lizard brain because like I first got exposed to Bitcoin in 2010. My cousin, I won't out him. He's at a tier 1 investment bank back in 2010, probably like, 2011, I'm sorry, like end of 2010, early 2011. Someone tried to sell this goated investment bank Bitcoin. I think it must have been like, I don't know, it's like 10 cents or something a coin or something. Something like ridiculous.
Can you imagine, bro, right now?
He calls me up because I came up as an economist. So he knew that I would sympathize. And he was like, hey, like, there's someone tried to sell us Bitcoin, this thing called Bitcoin. He sends me the white paper. I recognize it kind of coming up through economics. And this is like when LexisNexis was a thing. So I go on LexisNexis and I find this paper called B Money, this research paper called B Money by Wei Dai from 97. And this was like kind of like early days when I was trying to like figure out like my dissertation thesis. And I remember stumbling upon this and I send it to my cousin and we kind of laugh at it. It's like, yo, like whoever was trying to sell you this, this Ponzi, like literally ripped it off of Wei Dai from 97. We kind of laugh about it. And like when I was like hanging out with, fast forward a few years, it's like 2 years, like Bitcoin like ripped up to like $55. And I was like, wait a minute, like this thing that was worth pennies is now worth $55. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. But worst case, this is a Ponzi. And if you're early to a Ponzi, like Bernie Madoff, you probably made money. You just can't be the last guy holding the bag.
Yeah, you want to be out quick.
So it's like, so a lot of it was like in my lizard brain. And then like I ended up staying because like, you end up going to like the Bitcoin meetups on California Avenue in Palo Alto, at Anthony's Nut House. And like, there's like people like Hal Finney, like, Adam Black would roll through, like a lot of the cypherpunks from like the mid 90s that kind of came up through the small talk programming community. So it's like, it just kind of turned into like this thing where I was like, all right, I have no idea where this thing goes, but like, it's like, it was like a pass to like hang out with just a bunch of just like super shit smart people. Like there was like this like cypherpunk element where I probably didn't care as much about like, privacy preservation and all that. But like, again, like you just hear like a lot of these like, and these guys were probably like a generation above me. Just hearing the stories like as they were coming up in the valley, like the rise of the commercial internet. So I was like, if this is what Bitcoin gets me like into, like just hearing these like amazing stories where I'm just like drinking like, a couple of pints like that, like this is great. And
that's so incredible.
Yeah. But again, like I think and again, I think it was more like as people, I know a lot of people like, especially building on Abstract, they have like these Web2 jobs and they're still building, kind of their passion project, on crypto rails. And it's like, I was actually telling one co-founder today, it's like how I got into Ethereum was like, I had a day job of, I was commercializing Kubernetes, out of Google, and my night and weekend job was, like coming out of the ETH seed round and working on ETH 2.0. When that was the way to make Ethereum go fast. So, and that, again, like that was just, you kind of like a lot of my Warcraft friends were these Chinese guys that went back to China, earliest Bitcoin miners, probably came in at size, like one of the biggest like Ethereum seed rounders. And it was like a shared activity where we were working on ETH 2.0 or, contributing, amongst many, many people. But it was just like one of these things where you're just doing it for just because that's what your friends are doing. Mm-hmm. And no one had any idea that, Ethereum would kind of turn out to be this like, global settlement layer. So again, it's like a lot of this is like super haphazard. Like a lot of the guys that I came up with, in World of Warcraft ended up somehow being like the earliest Bitcoin miners out of China when they moved back home. And then they got connected to Vitalik because they had the first Bitcoin meetup when they were in college in Beijing, got normie jobs in Shanghai, brought their hobby with them, and then Vitalik, I would assume, saw that, learned Chinese, and they're like couch surfed, as he was trying to, drum up interest for the Ethereum seed round. And so it's like probably didn't really go full time crypto until we actually took the commercial grade Kubernetes startup public, and then that's where again having met Andreessen early days at HP, because Mark Andreessen was on the board of HP, just got to know them really, really well. And then, they were building up the Andreessen Crypto Fund, and they were trying to recruit a bunch of Web2 operators into crypto. So then that's kind of where, you invest. I invested in a lot of projects that spun out of Ethereum, like Cosmos, Polkadot, Filecoin. You're kind of like fractionally helping everybody.
Yeah. That's remarkable though to me. Okay, so I don't want to go backwards, but but you've worked with. I mean, this is just an incredible literally. I would pay to go watch this movie. But so this is awesome to me because we all have a unique story. We all have a story, and yours happens to be very, very unique. And I wanted to also say that I say this a lot on our show, but a lot of things that make it in the world, they're compelling and they resonate with people. And that goes back to the campaign that you were talking about, where you were trying to get those on the fence people. You made whatever it was that you were doing when you were reaching out to them, it was compelling enough and it resonated with them and you got their vote. So it goes with music, it goes with politics, it goes with gaming, it goes with anything in the world. To me, is being compelling and resonating with the people, so you can attract them to what you're doing. How do you get now? Well, how do you meet with Luca and the whole Pudgy Penguin ecosystem, and how does Abstract Chain become Abstract Chain? What were those conversations like? How were those meetings? How did those go?
Yeah, I think that's where I was full time in crypto for probably 4 years, and then I think this was last cycle. So then after that, I ended up going back into television, ABC television for a minute, working with Chad Selesky, who's created and directed the John Wick series. And again, early days LA, when I was at Comedy Central, some of the earliest people that I met were stunt people. These were guys that were doing the Matrix, right? David Leitch, Chad Selesky. And again, later on, they became these, go-to directors, right? That popped off with, John Wick, and then they kind of went off and did Hobbs and Shaw and Marvel movies. And again, it's if you kind of find your tribe early days, kind of roll with them, through the journey, and then, you never know where people end up. And so then I did that for a minute, kind of post crypto. And then that rolled into Activision Blizzard, because they were actually getting acquired by Microsoft. And a friend was on the board, and there was Bobby and team are really focused on, getting this acquisition done. But there's 5 game launches in a period of 18 months, from Overwatch 2, Call of Duty, or Modern Warfare 2. And then the last game I launched was Diablo 4. And again, so I was I don't know shit about game launches, but, happy to figure it out. But while I was there, this is where I got connected to Luca. They were, I think Pudgy was, really trying to figure out, okay, what did they do post, kind of post now kind of buying, this collection, this IP, really kind of rehabilitating it. And this is credit to Luca, Lorenzo, Chef, Vedant. They were thinking about it not just this is what every I think this pitfall that every Web3 crypto team made was okay, we have this amazing collection, we have a bunch of money, let's go build a AAA game. Not understanding how hard it is to make it. Diablo 3 to 4, that took 12 years, right?
Yeah, I know it's not easy, and it's a lot of
time. So it's and I think this is where I think Luca and team are literally just continuing to put on this clinic. They think about it more business model innovation, right? They're not we're not Activision Blizzard, we're not Supercell, we're not going to go create an amazing open world game, but we can create something really, really interesting where it's you have this collection that's owned by the community. because he took Gel Blasters from 0 to 500 million, into Walmarts and Targets, like, okay, I have that relationship. Why don't we kind of license, these penguins, get them into Walmarts and Targets, QR code that takes you into an open world game where people get to just hang out. The huddle is like an actual like is actual like a digital, playground. And then some fractional like sales of like the physical item and like the digital sales go back to holders. And you kind of have this like virtuous loop where, as this IP kind of is on this trajectory eventually to become, the Web3 version of Hello Kitty, like people are now, one, you get to own part of the IP, which is like part of the dream, as well as you get to share in, like the financial upside as both physical and digital revenue streams are activating. And I was like, man, like that sounds amazing. And I was like, again, like for freeze, I was just, you look at people like that and you're like, okay, like I need more people like, Luca and Lorenzo and Chef and Vedant to really like continue to be like push the space forward. I was like more than happy to help, with Pudgy World, like just provide free advice around like game design, game loops, make introductions to different talent, because I want to see those guys win, because those guys winning kind of lifts all boats up. And I think after I launched Diablo 4, the Andreessen Horowitz folks asked me to go work at zkSync and help them kind of get to hypergrowth and eventual TGE. And I think that's where, because I think with the Andreessen folks, like zk as a technology was like their big bet for Ethereum, which kind of has proven to be true. And so then it's like, okay, I'll go in here and, you're kind of like, in order to get to hypergrowth, you kind of need like two big, a handful of like really big use cases. So like we caught Melee on the rise up, we brought this digital ID solution onto zk. Pudgy World, eventually needed to launch, and they needed like a scale. They wanted to be on Ethereum because that's where the collection was, but they needed to be on like a scalable L2, and zk was it. So, we ended up getting to work together in, launching, kind of Pudgy going into Walmart with, kind of the alpha version of Pudgy World. And I think this is where a couple of us. This was like 2 ETH Denvers ago. This is like what, March of 24, where eventually Luca and the Pudgy team, as they kind of continue to scale out what they were building, they needed like an app store. They needed something that, gave them distribution, right? And eventually you kind of needed a chain unless someone wanted to host your app store. And then you had, I'm actually here out in LA with, we'll just say it's a large Hollywood agency. And they were also looking to, build a chain. Not that because they wanted to, because they were sending a lot of their clients to just existing chains, and they were absolutely just getting rugged, right? Whether they're like, notable chains or like just absolute shit chains, right?
Is it because they didn't know what they were doing, or
it's not their
people?
Yeah, it's not their space, right? And it's not like Web 2 where it's like, you can kind of, you have a good sense of like, which cloud.
It's easy to do research and find the solid. Yeah, I got you.
It's harder in Web 3. So like, I was kind of working with them on, building out a chain more as like a retention mechanism for their clients. And then you had Saigar building Frame on Arbitrum. And it kind of turned into this thing where it's like, hey, the three of us are all kind of working on, or this was just maybe like, I think the conversation was like with Luca and I, it's like, we're both building these consumer chains. At some point, if we're both successful, like, we end up competing. And we're like, why don't we just combine forces? That just seems logical. And then we're just like, we also need like core engineering. And this is where Luca's like, yo, I've been talking to Saigar, and I'd known Saigar, kind of through the Izuki team. And, people actually don't know this about him. I don't know if it's little known. It's like he came from Web 2. Like he came from early days Facebook, Uber, Robinhood pre-IPO. Super young guy, but just, already he like understands how to operate at scale. Mm-hmm. And he only came into to Web 3 through NBA Top Shots. Big basketball fan. He's like, okay, this feels like, okay, like this industry is becoming, more, has promised to go mainstream. So he's like, all right, I want to contribute to that. And he, again, he was building out Frame on Arbitrum, so we just decided, like, why don't we acquire Acquihire Frame for the talent? It's probably literally like the best group of core engineers, product people, and then we just restarted the chain on zk, and then that was what. So like we kind of came together like in March to incorporate Abstract.
Why Abstract though? Like who chose the name? How did you choose the name? What was the process for this?
I think if I get this, I think at least Luca, Lorenzo, and I had founded Abstract. I think we all agree that like blockchain should be just behind the scenes, right? It's like, right now this is streaming. We have no idea if this is on AWS, Google Cloud, or Azure. We don't really give a shit, right? We just care that it works, that the experience is, connecting people, kind of helping, kind of facilitating like the creator economy, and all of us came from Web 2. Like, I think people like for as young as like, so especially like the Pudgy team, like Saigar, Beans, like Stinky, Pablo R, like we all came from Web 2. I probably had more tours of duty in Web 2, but like Luca took, he kind of revitalized Von Dutch as a brand, right? He took Gel Blasters from 0 to 500 million, taking it Targets and Walmarts. Like Lorenzo, like he had a DevCo like based in Silicon Valley. He was like probably printing like $70 million a year in revenue. Saigar, obviously, having kind of come up through big tech, Beans coming from Coinbase, like. So every one of these guys, even like, Vedant, he was probably super early on the social community building side for Columbia Records. Like, I think he was doing that when he was like 15. So it's like, everyone has roots in Web 2 and understands how to operate at like at massive scale. So then like you're transferring those skills over to Web 3. Yeah. So then I think we had incorporated Luca, Lorenzo, and I, like started it in March. Like we finalized the acquisition of Saigar and his shop by May 1st. By June 1st, closed the one and only round led by Founders Fund. By June 20th, this is credit to like Saigar and the engineering team. They launched testnet, but they kept it private just to see for a month. Like, like is it performant? Is it scaling? And then by I think like July 28th, we came out of stealth last summer.
I remember.
And then it's just been a race to mainnet, and then just I think right now the pipeline's a little over 471 projects that have committed to launching on Abstract, both mostly crypto native startups as well as a lot of large brands. You'll start seeing probably next month in May a couple of big global brands launching on crypto rails. These guys have been kind of cooking on Abstract probably since like Q3 of last year. And again, like with a lot of these like large brands, like the dirty secret is like, it's all relationship based. Like I helped a lot of these brands, kind of platform to Kubernetes. Luca knows a lot of them, like Saigar, Lorenzo, like, even Vedant, for as young as he is. So again, it's like a relationship game. It's like, if you've made them successful, like in previous, transitions in tech, I could literally say, like, if I have like a piece of like some dog shit, they'll deploy on it. But again, that's like your relationship's over once, obviously, they catch a big L. So, you got to be careful with like, like essentially it's relationships. It's like, these are also people like,
you're not there to make a quick buck, Michael. You're there to I mean, otherwise you would have been done this a long time ago. You're there to make something solid. You guys are all a good core team that it seems like, everybody understands their part and what they're bringing to the table. And as a cohesive, you guys are like the A team, no pun to the Abstract for the A. But yeah, I mean, I think this is awesome. I want to know a little bit more deeper into Abstract. So this like, what is the sole purpose behind Abstract now? I know it's like the beginning stages of everything. We're streaming. Actually, I had a little bit of issue, but I think that's from my side tonight for streaming. But we'll restream it on Abstract. We usually go live every Tuesday. But for like the Abstract, for streaming itself, when do you guys roll out like the next, like the updates for the next, to let's say, where people can like and they can, do all these extra things that they can't do now to your stream.
Oh, it's just
more
continuous.
interaction.
Like if you're just watching Saigar, design product engineering team, like they're shipping on a weekly basis. I've not seen a group of people that are just so hungry to just push out like updates. And
so it's continuous. It's always, always.
And I think, again, this is like the Web 2 mentality, right? Like you look at the earliest versions of like Uber and Facebook and Amazon, like you go back to those early like UIs, they look like absolute dog shit, right? But the only reason that they're, like Twitch, right? Like I remember when that was like Justin TV and that kind of like migrated over, it's because like those teams just like keep refining it and perfecting it. And there's no perfection, like software is never finished, right? And that's the mentality where, even from like we're about 92 days old since mainnet, and like it almost looks almost night and day, which is great, right? And hopefully another 90 days from now, we'll have a bunch of these features, that you're talking about for stream, and you're starting to see like social elements like being added into the entire ecosystem. But I think what people don't, and maybe they'll start to realize this later, over time, but abstract in of itself is like it's not a chain. Like, yes, it is a chain, but the chain is probably the most uninteresting part. It's a commodity, right? Like there's 217 L2s on Ethereum, either in production or coming out this year. There's another 115 L1. So you're talking about like 400 chains. Like it's not that interesting, right? They're all kind of the same, and you're making trade-offs based on like throughput, decentralization, security. So whether it's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, zkSync, abstract, it's all the same shit. The difference is the thing that's on top for abstract. It's the consumer terminal. And the consumer terminal is like a crypto version of Sony PlayStation account meets Apple App Store meets Twitch. And that thing is designed for two purposes. It's one, it's a user acquisition engine, right? It targets Gen A, Gen Z crypto native users that have real discretionary spending power from 8 to 12 high GDP markets, like, these like Apple App Store markets that matter. Because if you're, a lot of these apps that are coming over, what do they want? They don't want a grant. They don't want a handout. They want users, right? And again, like there's nothing wrong with, users out of like Southeast Asia, India, Africa, Latin America. The problem is that they don't have loot to spend, right? If this is consumer crypto, right? And eventually we'll bring those people in. But right now we're focusing on like the 8 to 10 markets that really drive a lot of like, the spend. Again, like Android has way more users than iOS, but iOS makes more money. And that's kind of our sweet spot. And then over time, and this is where you look at something like the XP system, with XP and badges and, ranking up, what that eventually becomes later on is kind of an on-chain advertising platform where it's like a crypto native, privacy preserving alternative to Google Ads. So it's like, the badges, like they're almost like third-party cookies. So like over time, people will gravitate towards certain verticals. They'll have like a bunch of like gaming badges. And then, there's certain, the XP ranking up, that's like, kind of proves like how engaged you are on chain. Once you actually turn on credit card, ACH on-ramps where it connects your abstract account to your bank account, all of a sudden now you can actually use Apple Pay, Google Pay to buy coins and NFTs, or even like connect your Amazon, your Shopify purchases on chain, where you're still using your credit card to make Amazon purchases, but what you buy gets recorded on chain, to where now there's like you have an on-chain consumer crypto reputation. That's, again, the ZK part hides, preserves your identity. But now if you're a brand coming in, they can now target specific people based on this filtering, right? Where I don't know, like the two of you guys could be just, top 1% in gaming, and I mostly do DeFi. New game coming in, they want to like, whitelist for NFTs, maybe do like an airdrop, or like there's like a low FTV, like, round. You guys are way more valuable to them than me, right?
Sure.
Or if I'm you're drinking like, I don't know, soda products, and I'm drinking, like Fiji water, right? Like smart water coming in, I become more valuable. So then what the targeting system is, it doesn't replace like a Google ads or a Facebook ads. Again, that's like one to many, right? But the conversion rate on those things, it's like 0.00015%, right? It's like spray and pray. But what Abstract hopefully becomes, because it's essentially everyone's building out this unique on-chain reputation kind of score system, then all of a sudden, the conversion rate when someone's already consuming that category of product, whether it's like a game or water, it's like 13 to 15% conversion. So now all of a sudden, like if you guys are like, Pepsi drinkers, Coke can be like, I'm worthless. We want to give you guys like some kind of promotion, right? Where it's like you can like pick up like a pallet of Coke or something to convince you, or Coke sponsors a bunch of things and it's like based on your consumption, they're like, oh snap, like, there's some kind of like Coke sponsored, I know T Swift is coming through, Philly, and they're like, yo, Cookie, like, why don't we get you access, to, the concert, right? All of a sudden now it's like you're connecting like, that conversion rate is like just gonna be 100% because now it's like you have a positive, experience with that brand. So again, it's not disrupting Web 2, it's just complementing like, I think the existing like user acquisition, advertising platforms that are out there using crypto rails.
Yeah, it's moving everything into the future. Cookie, I know you want to jump in. Can't hear you. Your mic is muted.
Of course. No, I'm just taking it all in. This is great. What a great story. And I love we're talking about Abstract now and stuff too. And I love just, radio had a certain hit rate, then TV ads, and then internet web 2. And this is just like next level. It's like you basically know the people that are gonna want your stuff. And there's, by the data, and you can target them directly. And I'm curious how Abstract is the main like window to this, is the main tool, the Abstract streaming platform that is gonna, collect all this information, or is there other tools involved, other apps and stuff?
Yeah, it's just generally, it's how there's so many ways to interact, right? It's like the moment that you actually come in through by creating an Abstract global wallet, or kind of almost like, to me, that's more of less of a wallet, because like a wallet's like, I don't know, like a hardware wallet or exchange wallet that's like, you kind of put a shit ton of money on. Like the Abstract global wallet to me is like almost like a, like a gaming wallet, like a PlayStation account where you just put like $300 on it, go have fun. You're going to Disney and like, you don't put your life savings on like the Disney card, right? Like you just put like, I don't know, like, a couple $100 and you just go have fun. So it's like, even from that interaction to where I think right now, because you can obviously come into Abstract using an existing wallet, like like a Phantom, MetaMask. But I think most people are coming in, through email, through Google account, through passkey. It's like Face ID, Touch ID. I think it's like close to 70%. So like a lot of people that are coming, like the Abstract community, it's crypto curious people. And again, this is credit to Luca, the marketing, community team. Like they're, in a very stealthy way going out there and just, because right now it's like, if you look at like the numbers, it's like it's 1.9 million accounts, like close to 700,000 MAUs, like 100,000 DAUs. There's not that many people in crypto. It's like, so if you're, if those, and those numbers are, these are like real people like interact. You could just tell, like, I think Saigar is like looking at this, and it's like, these are, there really isn't farming, because it's not really, you're not getting any XP from like moving like $1 like from a bunch of different accounts. So like a lot of the farming dropped off probably, week 2 when they saw that they couldn't really get shit for doing that kind of activity. So then now it's like, there's not that many people on, on chain. So it's like, it's credit to Luca and the absolute, cracked marketing and community team, where they're just bringing people over from Web 2. And when they're coming in, they don't even know they're on chain, right? They're just signing in with their email or, like Touch ID. And then they're just in this marketplace, where this app store, where they're just trying different apps, and it's highly curated, because as new users come in, like you need to there needs to be like a 1 in 3 chance that they find something fun. Because if they're dumpster diving for, through a bunch of shit apps, then it's like they're going to spin out and never come back on chain, right? So you have to keep that super tight. And then, people are trading, they're collecting NFTs, they're consuming streams, right? So there's like hopefully it feels like eventually like the build out of like a digital Disneyland, where it's not just streaming, it's an entire like amusement park of, of ways to interact, and people are going to be different. You're seeing now where it's like the way that people interact with abstract is like 15 to 20 minutes a day, like especially like the DAUs. It's like in their break time. They're coming and they're doing all kinds of different things. Some of them are playing games, some of them are flipping coins, some of them are just watching streams. And I think that's where you want to be, right? Because just like you go to Disney and there's like the Mickey Mouse, the Avengers, the Star Wars, like the Pixar, portions of the park, and then like adjacent to it, it's like Universal. So you kind of want to make sure that this is all built out to where you satisfy a lot of different tastes.
For sure. So I'm trying to understand the flow of it all, and I poke my head around in there a lot. It's interesting, and it's also interesting because it's an early development, so it's exciting to watch these things grow. But basically, if I understand, if you could explain the flow, meaning like you get into this, you get your wallet, and I love the way you portrayed it. It's kind of like the wallet you have in the street, but then you have your bank account, which would be your ledgers and your other type of things, like your wallet that you go to the bar with. So you have your abstract wallet, you sign in with that, and then you have all these apps, and you have streaming as well. Now the apps, I'm trying to understand how it all ties in together. So the apps could be anything from like a game to a video stream to a combination of both. And
Myriad market.
And how do you put together that flow for each company who comes in? Because these are all separate entities that come in and have their apps on there. Is that how it works?
Yeah. So I think all they're really doing is, they're just integrating Abstract Global Wallet. So we make it so users can get credit, in XP, and that helps them rank up, get badges. But it's like, I think in this first phase of, kind of fun apps that require discretionary spending, it's like games to creator platforms, to trading, to casinos, betting like prediction markets, digital collectibles, tokenized culture. Like it's like, like there's like a core, like 7 categories of things that we focus on. And the common denominator is like they all just integrate Abstract Global Wallet into their specific apps and websites. And that just lets us, users kind of, get credit for, their on-chain behavior, and just kind of helping build out your own like on-chain reputation score.
Does the credit that they're getting, I shouldn't say they, because I'm part of that too, right? We're streaming on Abstract, and, we're part of the Rug Radio family. We're powered by Rug Radio. And so Myriad Markets, we've been there since the beginning. So we're seeing everything kind of come through, and awesome that they're using Abstract chain or Abstract. But so like, what does the XP turn into for the user? What can they use? What do they use the XP for? Essentially, we're going to have millions or hundreds of thousands of XP. What does that equate to? What does that turn into?
I think it depends on the type of user, right? And it's our job to give people different optionality. I think kind of crypto natives like XP, there's got to be some mechanism that translates XP into token, right? Because there's going to be a token. We are a decentralized, network, and the only way that you can actually mediate the control over a platform that everybody and nobody owns, like Ethereum, is through a token. And so I think the crypto native folks, who contribute, to the building out of the community, the ecosystem, and these are like super users, right? And this is why we, tell people like, don't farm it because you're just going to be disappointed. The ROI isn't going to be there. But like to the super users, like, yeah, like they've contributed, to the building out of the community and the ecosystem. And, it's like any brand, like luxury products, it's like 10% of the user base, like Hermes, like drives 90% of the revenue. Like same thing with gaming. It's like 20% of the player base drives like 80% of the revenue. So it's like there's that group of people that, where XP converts into kind of the native token, but it could also be a way for people to get exposure to the ecosystem of tokens, right? Where it's like, you could convert your XP into, I don't know, Bitcoin or Myriad coin. Everyone's gonna be slightly different. And I think there's also Web2 people that don't really want to fuck with token, right? Like, how do you get them? And I think and this was kind of a fun fact. It's like there's a little box at the bottom that says perks. How do you treat XP more like Amex travel points, where people can convert XP into flights, accommodations, maybe kind of unique events that are consumer oriented, whether it's like Super Bowl to even something crypto, native, like, I don't know, like token 49. Yeah. So it's, I think we're trying to be thoughtful where hopefully XP is valuable to different cohorts of users. Because if you just make it super crypto, the 65 to 70% of just crypto curious normies that are coming over that just never want to fuck with token, they're going to be absolutely disappointed. But they would love like converting their XP into flights or, a chance to, go to the Super Bowl with other people who are burning their XP to go to the Super Bowl, right?
That's cool. Yeah.
And it's like, you can either do it as like a group, like everyone burns their XP together, or you're just burning and you're showing up and you're meeting other abstract people, right? Now you're making friends. And now it feels like early days Ethereum, right? Where it's like you're going to these meetups from like Shanghai to Barcelona. And it's like all my online friends I'm meeting for the first time, or I'm making new friends, IRL. So again, this is credit to, Luca and, the community team. It's like how they're thinking about this stuff. It's like, I think what continues to make Pudgy great is it's not a financialized community. Like, people love Pudgy because they're making friends. It's no different than in gaming. Like, why is Call of Duty around for 20 years? Why is Warcraft, like, why are people still playing this game? Because it's a social platform. This is where your friends and family are. And it's the same mentality that I think the Pudgy team figured out for the Penguins, where it's like you're part of the huddle. And it's the same playbook, that we're using for abstract, but it's obviously bigger than, I think the core community started back in when we came out of stealth in July with Penguins, but now you're seeing, whether it's apes and Azukis and, the MOG community to, I think you're going to start seeing like individual big brands as they come over, they're going to bring portions of their community over, from Hollywood, sports, K-pop, and then that'll be fun, because then now you're getting like this big tent.
It's getting more worldwide at that point. How soon do you see? This is a prediction here. You're not going to get any points or any XP for your answer here. But what how soon do you see the big brands coming over to abstract? And then how soon do you see it becoming like a, let's say, when the internet was its first thing, or when Bitcoin first started, and now where it's at? Like, where do you see it headed? And how soon do you see it getting there, where everybody's using it?
So the TLDR is next month. There'll be two large global brands launching on abstract. The rule that we have is you can't just announce something and then all of a sudden, like 12 months later, you actually deploy. Like, that's whack as fuck. Like you have to like announce something. How are you going to use crypto rails into, kind of bring it into your tech stack to where it actually helps your existing business, hopefully, provide some value to your existing, fan base, user base. And then hopefully 2-3 weeks later, like, people can like experience it themselves, right? The portions of that community will come on chain, and then the abstract community, as well as like the whole cryptoverse, gets to hopefully experience that particular project, and hopefully then you become a fan of that that brand. We're focusing on a lot of kind of brands that are Gen A, Gen Z, because I think that's where abstract does well. Like, we're focusing on like 15 to 29-year-olds, like folks like me that are like younger Gen Xers, older millennials. Like, there's again, like, abstract is welcome to, everyone. But I think if you can focus on that demographic, brands will come over. And I think the rule is like, we don't pay brands. Like the last cycle, you used to be able to like, give a brand a bag. Like I think Polygon did this. I think like, I don't know, Sui, Aptos. Again, like nothing malicious. Like they're trying to do their part in using their resources.
Part of their marketing budget.
Yeah, they're trying to bring global brands on chain. Like, but again, like I think there's misalignment there. I think we're treating it more like how the rise of AWS, how we did Kubernetes, to where the platform is valuable to these brands, so then they're going to adopt it without us having to pay them a bag. But what we are going to do is we'll spin up some engineering resources to help them prototype something interesting, because that's not where their expertise is. And this is what we did with commercial Kubernetes. Did a lot of co-development with like the Fortune 100, and I think with that strategy, hopefully you build something. 1% of their kind of fan base comes over, and some of these brands have like 50 million users. So it's like 1% is pretty meaningful. And if you do that over and over again, like you can see like how this gets to 100 million, 200 million, 300 million users on chain. And again, like there's other ecosystems that have to contribute, whether it's Solana and Base and others, to where we collectively bring 1 billion people on chain. But we're trying to do our part, get us to that end goal. But yeah, a lot of these brands have started building probably like Q3, Q4 of last year, and probably 2 of them are teed up for next month, and then hopefully another 2, 3, and then another 2, 3, and then hopefully this stuff compounds. By the end of the year, we'll have a number of big brands to where it feels like, oh, okay, shit, like they're using crypto rails in a really thoughtful way that helps their existing business.
I have another question. Then I want to pass the mic to Cookie. This is pertaining to creators. So I know it takes a while for creators to get onto Abstract Chain, to get onto Abstract, to stream. Is there going to be a point where the creator has their own page where they can create a profile and create like, put their images up, put, whatever, and make it like their own page, and where they can actually have a store? So let's say the creator wants to give their own XP for engaging in watching a video or whatever it may be. Let's say it's musicians, right? For instance, since we are a music and tech show. So let's say Cookie has his own page and he wants to sell concert tickets. He wants to sell 50 copies of this blue colored album that he just pressed up, that's strictly for people that have been engaging with his content. Is that something that's on the plate for the creators that are on Abstract?
Oh, 100%. Right. Like, I think if we want to, and this is kind of where it's not just Abstract, right? This is where the creator economy, the culture economy is going towards, right? And I think we just got to, meet creators where they need to be to help them, kind of build up their profile, build up audience, and then ultimately be able to monetize. And I think right now it's, you're starting to see, things like social elements starting to be, added into the platform. You'll start eventually seeing, there's like general performance, like how do we kind of expand the number of whitelists for creators to stream? And that's more of like that's a cost thing, right? Like running streaming, which I do not recommend for anyone who's, building an ecosystem. It is unbelievably expensive. Like we're super lucky in that, probably pre-TGE, before we have our own war chest to really like, expand, called in some favors, and we have, a good deal to where we're able to, provide streaming, somewhat economically.
Is this why the floodgate is kind of tight in the sense of okay.
Like if we let this open to, every like Web3 creator, as well as like interested Web2, creators, you're talking about like maybe like, I don't know, who knows, like $10 million a month, right, in infrastructure spending, something like ridiculous. Like it'll bankrupt, us. So and this is why, we're doing it pretty thoughtfully. And then at the same time, it's like, we're playing the long game. Like we're going to be around for many, many years. So it's more like, how do you do this thoughtfully, where it's like you bring on a couple of these like super users, like super creators, and then hopefully you're just kind of watching them do their thing, getting their feedback, and then you're starting to prioritize, different features, and eventually, like whether it's social features, different like monetization features, like subscriptions, like what does advertising look like? Like we started off with tipping because we thought that was like a really organic way for users and creators to interact with each other, and intentionally we didn't take a cut just because again, like that just kind of feels antithetical to being pro creator, and we'll try to keep that up until we can't afford streaming, but I think for now things are good. And then eventually this gets to your kind of your end state, right, that you kind of described, where how does a creator have their own page to where they have their own incentives, which again, like you're seeing versions of this on TikTok, right, with like Pokemon basketball baseball cards, where people are just like blasting open like cases, and there's in their TikTok shop, like people number the packs, and as you rip open packs, like the percentage of a big card pull either increases or decreases. So like there's people are going to the TikTok shop and buying, and it already exists in Web 2, and you're just kind of pulling that on chain to just make it easier, and you're adding other mechanisms like tipping in crypto, which is just just not possible in Web 2 for just various like regulatory reasons. And so like all of a sudden now we have like a bit of an advantage because we can pull in a lot of Web 2 features, whereas Web 2 companies can't necessarily pull a lot of the kind of crypto native features into their platforms. And again, it's not competitive, it's just complementary. We're doing it for it's just kind of like with like the rise of like whether it's the rise of the internet on desktop or mobile, we're just catering towards a crypto native like audience of like this younger audience of like 15 to 29 year olds, and then like the people who are super savvy and seeing these shifts happen to where whether it's like desktop, mobile, containers, like now blockchain, like y'all gonna figure this out like much sooner than others. It's like everyone at Rug Radio coming from the rise of mobile, like you guys get this better than anybody, so you'll still have those folks. But again, like we keep focusing back on this younger demographic because that's what brings big brands. Because if you're not going to give them a bag, what else do they want? They want access to a younger audience, right?
Right.
A younger customer base.
That's what it always is. It's always that's really what it is. I had a buddy of mine. I don't know if you know the name Matt Britton. He started a company called MrYouth.com, MRY.com. They ended up selling the company, to a big I don't know to who, but like they ran this company and they basically they launched like the Sony PlayStation, but they launched it at like spring breaks. They worked for the Gap, they worked for Playtex, Kotex, or whatever. So it was basically they were marketing and advertising to the demographics that you're talking about, from 15 to 29, basically really attacking college kids at that point. But you're right, that's where it's at, right? Past that point, who knows? People have already made their mind up with things that they want consumer wise, I believe. Yeah,
and again, this is us trying to figure out our own way. Like, how do we bring big brands on chain where they're providing value to the abstract community with what they're building, as well as you're bringing like even 1% of their kind of customer fan base on chain, and just kind of continuing to grow the ecosystem and the community. And then at the same time, again, with more of this, more audience coming in, that's great for entrepreneurs who are building apps, great for creators because there's more content, more eyeballs. And again, like this stuff like exponentially compounds like month over month. And yeah, pretty bullish on where we're going to end up by the end of the year.
Awesome. Cookie, man. I'm gonna leave it. Yeah, your mic is muted. I'm gonna leave it for you. Michael, I just wanted to say because we're getting closer to the hour here, to 10 o'clock. I'm going to leave it with Cookie to ask you some more questions and stuff. But I wanted to say thank you, man, for coming on with us and hanging out and just breaking everything down. Your story is interesting. Like I said, I definitely would go see the movie. That's 100%. And so I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I hope that we get a chance to speak with you again in the future when things have, more built with Abstract, because, I love the platform. I think it's, like Cookie said earlier, we're awesome to see it growing and from the beginning, and being able to be there from the inception of it, has been awesome for us. So,
and continue to give us like super harsh feedback.
Mad props.
Whether you're creators or entrepreneurs building apps, or even super users, right? We get so much of the focus, like probably for this week and next week, is like enhanced trading experience, and that's because people are shouting at us in a good way, in a constructive way. So it just, it gets Saigar and Chef and Sticky, Pablo, to prioritize that experience. And again, we'll go back to streaming and improving that, and we'll go. And even now, it's I think we're doing a lot of focus around, how do we turn Abstract Global Wallet into a neobank, where you there's credit card and ACH SEPA on ramps to where it feels like I can toggle back and forth from on chain to kind of my bank account
Easily.
How do I pay for coins? How do I pay for buy coins and NFTs, using Apple Pay and Google Pay? Just trying to make it just easier for people.
That's right.
Again, a lot of that was just feedback that we got. It's it was always on the roadmap, but when you hear enough people, you can kind of figure out what takes priority.
Yeah. I think the hard part, what would be great is when you have a product. Okay, we understand Web3, we understand the blockchain, we understand there's a million chains. You got Solana, you got Arbitrum, you got Abstract, you got Bitcoin, you got Ethereum, yada yada. I mean, the list goes on. There's like you said, over 400 of them. But if let's say somebody has a bunch of different coins in their wallet and they want to be able to use that on Abstract, for instance, to buy something, the conversion should be in the background, where the consumer doesn't have to do anything. And he's thinking, how do I get my Abstract chain to Myriad token so I can use it over here? So, yeah. What's that?
No, 1,000%. Right.
Yeah.
It's no different. As you travel to different countries, you put your, ATM card, just including Japan recently. It's I'm getting yen and won, right? I'm not having to there's some transaction fee,
sure.
But again, there's a convenience there. Right.
Right.
And then it's kind of a shit experience. Cause now I have a bunch of loose change, and it's how do I convert that back to USD? And this is where I think crypto has an advantage over fiat, where it's you're able to move around from different city states, right? From Abstract to Solana to Arbitrum, and hopefully you're able to, kind of convert, all the shit in the back end as you're going from almost from, SF to LA to Tokyo. It's you don't have to, figure all the, kind of the logistics.
That's right. Cookie.
For sure, man. It's great. Great listening to you. One quick question, I guess, since we're at the end of time, I don't want to hold you up, but just, I'm interested if anybody here is listening, not from the creator perspective, but what's the process, just briefly, just for somebody who wanted to come to Abstract and have their app on there, I know Rec just went over there, Myriad's on there, and there's a bunch of games as well. What's the process, and is there a curation of it?
Definitely curation, right? Because it's I think this is where a lot of, kind of crypto ecosystems have fallen flat, because they're just general purpose computing environments, right? Which is great. That's just, it's permissionless. Anyone can deploy something amazing or just something experimental. But I think for us, if you want to do consumer well, there's three things you got to figure out. It's curation, discoverability, and distribution. When my kids come online, they're going to curated marketplaces, right? They're going to the Apple App Store. They're going to Netflix for content. They're going to Amazon, right? Kind of consumer crypto is no different. So, in order for us to retain, I think we have a 35% retention rate after 30 days. Like a good benchmark coming from, like AAA gaming is like 5 to 10%. Is this idea of like when people, especially crypto curious normies, come on chain, you got to give them like a 1 in 3 chance of finding something interesting. Like, how do they get to Myriad, like off the jump, right? If they got to like dumpster dive to get to Myriad, they won't even get to Myriad. Like, they're going through a bunch of like 7 whack ass apps, and they won't even get to Myriad, right? But if like Myriad is like within like, 3 app choices away, or something like equally amazing, then great. You're going to retain that person. And even if they come in and like their anchor app is like, 77-bit or, even gotcha, discoverability lets me then send them to Myriad saying like, hey, like, because you love gotcha, you're going to love Myriad, right? And vice versa, right? And that just keeps them on chain, hopefully kind of building out their reputation, because there's this like gamified kind of on-chain reputation system. But I think with that in mind, to do curation, there's probably 3 subjective rules, criteria that we have in figuring out, so as apps come in, we probably cut about 70% of the interested apps, because like we just, for whatever reason, it's not going to like move the needle, right? It just creates a lot of clutter. So like the criteria that we use is like, you have to do one of 3 things. You either have to have a pretty clear line of sight to getting $1 million in revenue, because what you've built provides value to a user to where they want to spend their money, right? Mm-hmm. So there's like a clear like monetization pathway. If you have a freemium model, what is your path? You have a clear path to 1 million MAUs. We're not asking you to get to like 1 million MAUs off the jump, but like if you're building something compelling, you'll quickly figure out your core 1,000 true believers, which then share to friends and family. You get to 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Some of these apps, like road tracing is getting to about 100,000. Eventually, they're going to eventually get, if they keep it up, they're going to get to 1 million MAU. So it's like, all right, like that's freemium model, like that works. And the last criteria, if you don't have, kind of this like revenue focus or a user focus, you're culturally significant. And this is kind of like, like streetwear, right? Like hip hop in the early days. It's, you might not be kind of like the mainstream like thing in apparel or music, but what you're doing is culturally significant. And then there's like a really like, you're kind of like representing like, the culture, for that younger generation. And that'll kind of grow into something bigger. But yeah, so I think some NFT projects might kind of fit in this spot. A lot of like, like culture coins will kind of fit in that criteria. So if you can kind of check one of those 3 boxes, those criteria, then you're probably going to be amongst the 30%. I think right now we're tracking about 471 projects, and we kind of break them up into cohorts, depending on what their launch schedule is. And probably twice a week, we're just ruthlessly like checking in on these apps, making sure that they're making progress. If they're not, we just cut them. And then that just gives us a chance to like kind of accelerate somebody else. Which again, that's all fair, because there's some people who are kind of slated maybe like in cohort 3, but like they're like working their ass off. And it's like, we gotta move these people up because they're going to crush it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Go ahead, Cookie.
No, I was just saying that's really interesting. And it's just, I just been really enjoying just listening to this conversation, because it's so focused. This thing you're building, it's so focused. And I'm going to listen to this back and hear it all again. You said some great shit. And thanks for coming on the show.
No, I appreciate it. I feel like I was just yammering for like an hour.
No, we're having fun over here, man. I mean, it's good. Look, we want to know about Abstract. We wanted to know a little bit about you, Michael. You have definitely an interesting backstory leading you up to Abstract and to this conversation. There was one thing I wanted to bring up that I didn't during the show, but I'm a huge race fan, car racing. I noticed that you had an image of you at I don't know, it looked like it was Formula 1. It could be Formula E, it could be Formula 2, Formula 3. I don't know. But at any rate, you must be into car racing as well.
Yeah, I grew up as a motorhead, kart racing. My dad was he was working for Daimler doing engine design, back before Mercedes had a team, and they'd sell engines to F1 teams. and just kind of grew up on the track, especially on the European circuits, like in the summer. And this is like before, like, F1 became like big business, right? Like you could literally just walk the pits, go to garages. Like they just loved the fact that like me and my brother were like just two kids that were interested. And, it's like, I think it's like we're trying to become, kind of aspiring F1 drivers. I didn't have that, in me like that. Like I think you see these guys like, Max and everyone on the grid, especially like even at a young age, like so these kids are born with it, right? It's like the first thing is like your brain is detached from your foot, right? As you're going like, like 70 miles an hour into like a turn, your brain is like, I got to hit the brake. But for whatever reason, there's a detachment. So your foot doesn't actually do shit until like the last possible moment.
And you lock up your brakes and that's the end of the story.
Yeah. And it's like, I remember, oh God, this was like what, like even like at 10, like just, you just see like the gnarliest of accidents, like, where it's like kids just get absolutely wrecked. These like once these carts flip, like you just, break your neck and just, be done. Or like you land wrong and like it's like, I didn't see it, but like, you hear these stories or see where like just kids just get impaled by like the steering column. Right. So even at a young age, like that shit's super dangerous. So it's like, you just got to know when to tap out. But just now a huge fan of F1, and just
who's your driver? Let's say who's your driver today?
It was I grew up on the German drivers because my mom grew up in Germany, so I kind of grew up with Schumacher. Followed Sebastian Vettel until he recently retired.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably the last 2 seasons probably don't really have
a real driver.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of again like what's not to love about Max? That guy's an absolute like savant.
He's a beast.
You got
Lando too. Those kids are beasts.
Oh,
I mean,
dude,
I think all of those kids. Really, I mean, Gasly. What's the kid he's driving for? God, he's driving for Mercedes now.
You're talking about like 20 of like the world's best drivers, and it's like even if you are like in the shittiest car, you are one of 20 in the world that
you're one of 20 in the world that get the opportunity to drive in Formula One. But
yeah,
how shitty is it though? I didn't mean to cut you there, but how shitty is it that there are 20 drivers, but there's only a certain amount of drivers that where the constructors are killing it? Like last year, McLaren wasn't doing anything. Red Bull was, but then all of a sudden this year now McLaren has their constructors are like, you know what I'm saying? Like on top. So
between Lando and Oscar, like they're just like absolutely just like, just 1 and 2 on the podium, like with like Max kind of like, eking in there every once in a while. But again, like it's kind of fun to like watch Max and Red Bull right now because like the man is like a one-man show, right?
Yeah, one-man show.
Like it's like, I don't know, it's
they got rid of that kid Lawson. They booted him out. Sonoda they put in, but Sonoda's another like driver that you would think they put him into the Red Bull car that he'd be at least top 10. Like he's not barely even getting there.
Yeah, for now he's like outpacing what Lawson did, which isn't like a very high bar. I was hoping for him to show well, Yuki to show well at the, in Japan. Like it's kind of like one bad mistake during like qualifying, like got him like a shit pole position, and I think after that it's really hard to like overtake. But
if you're not on the pole, so Verstappen would have won last week's race, or 2 weeks ago he would have won that race if they didn't get that 5-second penalty. I usually feel like anybody that's on the pole, those guys are just too good to lose it, to lose the race.
Well, yeah, you're betting that these guys are absolute pros are going to make like a mistake, which is it happens, but like damn, it's like it's going to be so rare.
Very rare.
Circuits are even worse. It's like city circuits are too narrow to overpass. Like whether it's like Vegas, Singapore, Monaco, like how if you're not in the top 3, you're cooked, right?
Yeah, you're cooked. And those cars are pretty big. People don't realize how big the actual car is. I mean, it's huge. It's heavy, hard to get around. It's just insane. Who I was talking about was George Russell. Really love that kid. I think he's, got a good, this season he's been crushing it, I would really love to see.
Well, Kimmy's doing great too in the number 2 spot. Like it's like they've really hit it right with Lewis to Russell to Kimi. Like like everyone thought that with Lewis moving to Ferrari,
Antonelli's crushing it. You're right. Kimi is crushing it. And it's Mercedes, bro. They got rid of Lewis Hamilton. They sent him the Ferrari, and they're
I'm also rooting for Lewis to get that one last chip.
I don't know, man.
It's like because you want to make sure records are meant to be broken.
True.
And you want him to kind of raise the bar, and then hopefully Max and whether it's Oscar or Kimi or like Russell, they have something to chase, right? It's not just always Schumacher.
Yeah.
You kind of saw this with with Gretzky and Ovechkin. Records are meant to be broken. Alex kind of set the bar slightly higher now, and we'll see whether that next crop of hopefully goated hockey players goes and chases God golden glory. That's the stuff I love baseball for that reason too. It's these 100+ years of records, and people are chasing immortality.
That's right. Like you said, records are made to be broken. So okay, last thing. When abstract car? When abstract on a Formula One car? When a lime green car?
I would say this. I think abstract is similar to like a streetwear brand, right? It's like Off-White, Supreme. They never advertise. It's actually negative EV, right, to advertise. I think, at least for me, it's like, when is F1, right? When is an F1 team going to build their core business on abstract, on crypto rails? That is probably, for me, that is the most bullish signal, because if you're Myriad, it's like, well, shit, I need F1 fans to come over, where they discoverability introduces them to prediction markets. So it's great for a crypto native folk, because it's like, now it's like, users are coming and discovering other things. Whenever I think hopefully brands don't, or chains don't do this anymore. Whenever you see chains buy, sponsor things, that's, I don't know, it's like HP sponsors Ferrari. I don't want to be HP. No disrespect, right? It's like, you do that because you're not relevant, right?
You're not relevant. I get
it. If Virgil's not going to do that for Off-White, I guarantee Luca's not going to want to do that, right? I think that's where probably the most, and I haven't seen this yet in crypto. If there's a chain that gets just adopted by global brands because the tech is good, because the community is, higher end, where they're going to help their business, that's probably the sign. It's that is going to be the consumer chain. So even for us, it's we're not the consumer chain yet, because consumer brands haven't come. There's a lot of crypto consumer use cases, like startups, that are fun, but where's the big consumer brands? Once the consumer brands start landing on abstract, and I'm confident because I know there's two are coming next month, then it's game on. Okay, so then now we got to prove ourselves to retain these brands, and then constantly onboard new consumer brands, as well as it's like a 5-to-1 ratio. For every 5 Myriads crypto native startups, you get a big brand. It's no different than AWS or Kubernetes. It's always the native projects, and then you have to bolster it with a global brand.
Awesome, dude. Well, man, this has been a breath of fresh air for us. Usually we're talking about music and tech. We did talk a little bit about music. You mentioned some hip hop stuff, which I'm hyped, because I grew up in the hip hop community. That culture was just, I'm hip hop. I don't know any other way around that. I could tell you that. And so that was pretty hyped to hear you speaking of that, and then rubbing elbows with Rick Rubin and them, and very, very cool stuff, man. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out with us while you're chilling. Are you waiting for a flight? Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm actually at I'm at a large Hollywoad agency, in there.
Oh, okay. I thought you were in the Amex lounge, chilling.
No. For your flight. No. I'm just at an office out in here in LA. Same thing, checking in on a couple of large sports and entertainment brands that are building on abstract, making sure, just a lot of whiteboarding sessions.
Excellent.
And then just kind of making sure they're queued up. They get handed off to Saigar and the engineering team. Then they get handed off to Luca and the go-to-market team to make sure that community rallies around them. It helps their business, and then eventually word of mouth. like everything has been word of mouth, like from, crypto native projects, like they're talking to like Farouk and Loxley, and they're like, yo, you got to come over here because this is where all the action is. Like same thing's going to happen with global brands. Like you don't need to like even have a press release because, for example, like if the NBA is building on Abstract, guaranteed you get the NHL, the NFL, the MLB, because they're watching what their counterparts are doing, and they're like, shit, like as long as they're successful and they're getting like an uptick of like new users or finding clever ways to make more revenue, everyone's going to come knocking. And so I think that's
have to go to them. That's so 100% true. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, once it's proven, they see it's working, they're moving over, they're coming. I wish you guys the best of luck. We're here with you guys for the long haul. I'm excited, that Rug Radio and Myriad is working with you guys as well with Abstract, and we look forward to it. I personally, before I let you run, we're musicians, so our show's music and tech, but I really would love to see maybe some music, or if creators like us had an opportunity to have that page where we can put our music on the blockchain, but it's on Abstract chain or whatever on that platform. That's really would be the end all for us. I would love to see that. I think, music streaming on blockchain and just musicians having a home to where they're not getting ripped off, where they're in charge of their own destiny or whatever however you want to put that. I think that's really what I want to see. Right?
No, same here. Music and gaming.
Music and gaming, yeah.
Like I kind of like listen to you guys, in the intro. It's like, people are streaming like on Spotify. Like you're making like, I think like 0.0003 cents per stream. Like you get like 1 million listens. Like you're making what, like 3 racks? Like what the fuck? Like,
it's been like that forever.
Yeah. It's like, how hard is it to get 1 million people? Like, even if it's the same like handful of people, like listening to your track, like over and over again, like to produce something like a piece of art, where people want to listen to what you're producing, but then only getting compensated like, $3,000. No, it's atrocious. So it's like, I think again, this is where crypto rails hopefully opens up a lot more pathways for creators. And that's just not just streamers. Like we're starting with streamers, but it's creators of all form. Like how do we make sure that, that they have a sustainable way to continue doing what they do?
100%, man. I hope it gets there, dude. I really, really do. I mean, I look forward to it. I say I hope it gets there. I just look forward to when it's there that we get an opportunity to utilize that, because I think that would be great for musicians, knowing that they can actually put the money in their pockets instead of everything else. I mean, it's the same with with buying records being made, CDs, you name it. Like when cassettes, 8 tracks. Just in the history of music itself, musicians have always gotten jerked. The record label has taken everything. You might be lucky to get 10 cents per record or 25 cents per record, if that. So off of a $9.99 record, the musicians aren't making it. So they're usually on making it on the performances and their merch. So, but yeah, man, Michael, I do. This is awesome. We could probably sit here and talk for another hour. You've been awesome. So thank you so much for your time. I'm really glad that we had this conversation. You're a down to earth person. I look forward to seeing the growth of Abstract and what you guys are going to do. And I hope that we can have you on the show, once it gets to that plateau and we can bring you back and have a conversation, and you can be like, I told you so.
Yeah. Happy to come back once we get like an F1 team or,
there we go. Awesome, dude. Enjoy your travels, man. Thanks again. Everybody, this has been Just Riffin'. We do it every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you very much. We're powered by Rug Radio. We'll see you next week. We have Rad TV coming on the show. Hang out with us. So be sure to tune in with us on that. We'll be streaming live on Abstract, X, YouTube, you name it, we're there. Thank you, everybody. Peace out. Have a great night. Cookie, Michael, thank you again, guys. Thank you for your time. Everybody, thank you, too, for watching.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Just Riffin'. Tuesday night, 8:30 EST. Know where we be. Just Riffin'. Special guest and tech and talk. A musicology. Just Riffin'. Coming to you live at the same time. Here every week. Just Riffin'. Jump in the room. Let's chop it up. It really ain't that deep. Just Riffin'.